to Above Spirituality Season 2, Episode 18. We are here today with Gigi, who is a Chicago-based, as she likes to call it, a mindset and transformation coach.
Yes.
How are you doing today, Gigi?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to out you that you just said you were over-caffeinated. And
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah, got to.
I love that, as Chicagoans, you have some Dunkin' right here because America runs on Dunkin'. No, Chicago runs on Dunkin'. We're junkies. Well, with that very dumb joke out of the way, I'm very excited about what we're going to talk about today. The topic we kind of landed on was the importance of self-love in manifestation. And I'm particularly interested in that because over at this, fans of the show will know that I talk about being in a nonprofit called the School of Metaphysics, and manifestation is like a huge thing that we do, and it's an area of like spirituality that I would say is not like my crazy strong suit. So I'm really interested to hear what you have to say, but you were telling me that you don't really love the word manifestation.
I don't, and I'll tell you why. I mean, when you're first getting on the spiritual journey, I think it can sound very appealing. It's like this woo-woo magical thing, like, oh, I can get whatever I want. And that's cool, but honestly, to me, manifestation is aligning your thoughts and beliefs with action. So I'm actually a very action-oriented person, and that's how I've been able to manifest so much.
Yeah, a lot of people, especially myself, get surprised that, there is, or at least you could say, if you want to be devil's advocate, there seems to be some sort of special power that the mind, can influence the world and, make it more likely to have certain experiences or happenings or objects in the life that are uncanny and not totally related to a domino effect of cause and effects of actions that I did. Yet, what a lot of my friends who are more successful manifestations, I was like, what's the secret? How do I get this secret power? They're like, yeah, you do this something every day. And it is often very action oriented.
Yeah, so for me, it was, I kind of fell into it on accident, to be honest, and I think that's how a lot of people come into manifestation is they're trying to get something. Right?
Oh, totally.
So they're like, I'm trying to manifest a person. I'm trying to manifest more money. I'm trying to manifest a new job, which is fine. But what's really interesting is if you stay on the journey long enough, it all boils back to the same thing, which is you have to work on what's going on inside of you first before you can attract all those things in.
Are you much familiar with Christianity at all?
Yeah, I was raised Catholic.
Same.
Yeah.
What is so interesting about that, and this is something, it's a big teaching over at the School of Metaphysics. We call it, you've probably heard of universal law, and we say there is the complete law. It's the highest teaching, and it's something that Jesus said in Matthew, which is, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and God's righteousness, and all else shall be added unto you. So it's to me, it's when you, and of course Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is within. So I feel that's in alignment with what you just said.
Yeah, so when I got into my spiritual journey, it was because I was trying to attract somebody in. It was this kind of back and forth relationship. He introduced me to the concept of twin flames, which I also despise now because it's just an excuse to try and force something that shouldn't have happened. But I got into it because I was trying to manifest him back. And the longer I was on the journey, the more I realized when I took care of myself and what was going on inside of me, I did attract him back. But I decided at a certain point that I didn't want that anymore because I outgrew it. So the interesting thing is when you spend more time working on yourself, you might outgrow all of those desires you initially had that got you on that journey in the first place. And I think that's a good thing. You need to outgrow this wanting and needing because it's coming from a place of lack, not from a place of I feel good about myself and I just want this thing to complement what I already have going on in my life. You're trying to fill a void of some kind.
It's such a catch-22, but it's funny because, I've really been working on my own inner state for a while, and there was a person I wanted to attract back, but more so unconsciously. And it was so funny because, the more I spent time with that particular, feeling inside of me, and when I'd seek we do a lot of Akashic record readings at the School of Metaphysics, and they've recently very clearly told me it's like, no, it's about the home within you. Like, this person just made you feel comfortable within, but that's just what you do by yourself. And it was funny because, I am in the dating scene, so obviously you're on a couple apps, and I've noticed that when I'm feeling really comfortable with myself, or like, I have a better internal state, I start getting matches. Like not even matches. Like, I just swiped on someone and they packed me. It's like, oh yeah, like ping, 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 like these, which is just like, and the catch-22 is it's like, oh, so then should I just need to get myself to feel good so I get, the validation. But of course, then that's just lack too in itself.
Yeah, you're chasing that that wanting to feel good because you want to attract more people to you.
Yeah, you're trying to like trick God and yourself. Like,
it's human nature though. Like,
oh, we're bargainers.
I mean, like, even when you learn about these things, you'll still catch yourself doing it. I don't know if it ever truly goes away. I think Cole, like the last guest you had on, he's definitely in a very like solid place of like spiritual detachment in a good way. Like he said, he didn't have any expectations coming into this. He's like, I don't advise anyone to do anything. I can only speak from my own experience. And I was like, that's someone who's really like leveled up in their spiritual game for sure. And he didn't even mean to do it. It just happens.
Yeah. And I think one thing that really helps with that is when you do feel very secure in like a specific spiritual pathway, or you could say program, or even like a religion, or you could even, to make it spiritual, just say you're just comfortable with something in your life. And that is one reason why, fans of the show will know I often recommend like that. I think it's good to try to find like a program or a pathway that works for you, because when you get comfortable in it, you do become somewhat powerful. And as you achieve the things you want, a lot of the other desires and stuff, or even like the needs to get other people to like what you like, does kind of fade away.
Yes. So going back to the dating thing, I'll give you a really good example, because I always say this is my best manifestation to date, was manifesting in my current partner. And how it happened was I was 32 at the time. I'm 36 now. So at the time I was 32, I had gone through like a bad series of like, I mean, I always had like kind of like bad relationships growing up. Like, I had really poor self-esteem, and so because I lacked the self-awareness, I thought that's all I deserved. And so I attracted in a lot of like really bad, like harmful relationships from like a young age. And so I just kind of like grew up thinking, all right, like love isn't safe, like, and just having all these limiting beliefs around love. And I got to a point where I was just like, I saw like people in my family getting married and having kids, and I was still by myself, and people are always like, why are you by yourself? And I'm like, because like I haven't found anyone that can like live up to like what I think I bring to the table. And so I had gone through like a series of like bad dating experiences again, and I finally got to a point where I was like, I literally do not care if I die alone now. Like, I am so tired of like settling and putting up with bullshit, and like I just don't care anymore. And so I sat down one day and I was like, all right, if I can have whatever I want, I'm going to write down all the characteristics I want in a partner, even down to the physical attributes, because why not? Like, just for fun. And so I wrote all these things down in my phone, and I said, like, just throughout, like, I want him to have dark hair and tattoos and like whatever, just a bunch of like random
Be super
stuff.
handsome and sexy.
Yeah, so I wrote
Nothing
it all
wrong
down.
with that.
So I wrote it all down in my phone, and I just forgot about it, and I went on with my life. And I too was on the apps, but I matched with him, and I was like, oh wow, this guy's like really attractive. I was like, whatever, it's not gonna work out, whatever. And he wound up like messaging me, and I was like, all right, cool. And we talked for a couple weeks. I had been going out of town, so we couldn't like meet up in person for a while. And the day came, it was like the morning of, and I was like, I haven't heard from him. He probably forgot, whatever. And he texted me and he said, are we still on for tonight? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, did you make a reservation anywhere? It's Friday night in Chicago. And he was like, no. And I was like, well, fucking. And I was like, this guy. And I was like, all right, fine. I was like, you know what? And he's like, you pick a place. And I was like, all right, I'm going to pick something that's super close to my apartment. I'm going to go for 2 drinks, and then I'm going back home. And that's exactly what I told all my friends, because I was annoyed. I'm like, whatever. So I went into it. I had no expectations. I did not care what was going to happen. And we wound up staying out until like 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's how our preceding 3 dates went. And everything was just like easy. And I happened to come across the notes in my phone a couple months later, and he matched everything down to a T. And I was like, what the fuck? And I was like, okay, all right, I might be onto something here. And then I also manifested like 3 different apartments, kind of doing like the same thing.
See, I'm so glad to like get those reminders, because really I'm just having you on the show because I need to learn your secrets, and produce content. No, joking, but it's like, yeah, it's a big thing we teach at the School of Metaphysics. It's like you visualize and then you have to like take your attention off of it. And I'm always remembering of, it was either in the documentary of like The Secret or What the Bleep Do We Know, where it was like, I don't remember who this gentleman was. I think he's some sort of spiritual creative. And he was like, yeah, I remember I made a vision board. I put like a house on it. And then, the board, I didn't see it for like 5 years, or actually it was like way longer. And one day he was like unpacking something in his office with his like young son, and his son pulled out the vision board and was like, hey, Dad, what's this? He's like, oh, that's my old vision board. And then he like stopped and he saw like a jump cut, and we'll put it over anyone else. Technical difficulties we were just laughing about. And now that the cliffhanger is over, and what he ended up seeing was that on the vision board was a picture of the house that they were currently living in, which is just like,
That's crazy.
yeah. So there is like, it's this balance I never really figured out, or one, I didn't figure out because I didn't give myself enough experiences with it maybe, but 2, I'm also just like maybe a little too brainy and trying to figure things out, is the balance between being action oriented and consistent in your manifestations, and the of like, oh, also I just like visualize something and let it go. You were saying, I want to just open the floor to you. What do you think, or just what's your process for like this manifesting and stuff, for lack of a better word?
So when I first started out, I got really hung up in the different methods. And if you go on YouTube, which I was at the time, just like the 555 method or the 369 and like all these things and the affirmations and stuff like that. And what I realized over time is it's not the method, it's whether or not you believe it's going to work. So when you get to a certain point of like trust within yourself, you don't need those techniques anymore, because you're like, I just inherently know that I have the ability to attract these things in. And the way that you do that, actually, I discovered recently, is through habits. I think a lot of us like lack self-trust, and that's why we abandon ourselves and we run away from the big scary feelings, because we don't think we can handle it. And so for me, I'll give you an example. Like when I started my YouTube channel a couple months ago, I had this really limiting belief that I was going to run out of content ideas. That was my biggest fear. And so I challenged myself and I was like, all right, I'm going to make 1 video a day for 30 days. And throughout that time, when I was building up that habit of creating content, I built trust in myself. And that trust is what has been carrying me through ever since, and has allowed me different opportunities, like doing something like this or speaking at the altar. Like, it's building those habits which build the self-trust, and the self-trust is what actually gets you to manifest. And again, that kind of goes back to self-love too. You trust yourself because you love yourself, and you just kind of develop this confidence that anything is possible.
Yeah, it always kind of made sense to me that, when we were talking earlier about like these special powers of the mind, I do believe that, the mind does have like these special powers. I don't know why I'm so Christian today, but it's funny because, again, I'm reminded of something I think Jesus said in Mark. It could have been Matthew. It's crazy because Jesus actually taught a lot of manifestation, like in the Gospels. And I'll quote 2 really important things he said. One, he said something along the lines of like, your heart is so powerful that if a man believeth with all of his heart that a mountain is to throw itself into the sea, it would. And I'll probably share his other thing a little later on, but it's like, think about it. What Jesus, or you could even say Krishna said the same thing. He said, Krishna being the divine is like the source and the seed within you, or the Buddha saying like, yeah, you're not actually this human being. You are the Dhamma. You are the way of the universe. Is that your mind probably does have this special power of the universe because it is the universe.
Yes.
And so it always made sense to me that something like belief is so important, because if God, like as the universe, is using its special powers, but it doesn't believe it's going to work, well, then why would it work? We had a conversation with a gentleman about magic once, and he was like, primarily it's about belief.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because, again, I had an experience recently that I think like shifted a lot of things for me. And I'll be honest, I really struggled with depression and anxiety for like most of my adult life.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like, should be real out here.
Like bad. And I do think like part of my mission is to kind of like lead people out of the darkness, because I've been there myself. So like when you talked about doing those past life regressions, when I did mine, I was always a warrior and I was always by myself, and that really stuck out to me. It was like,
I can see the warrior energy.
I gotta like walk the path by myself, but it's so that I can like guide and help other people out of it. And so that's what I think I've been like called to do. And I had an experience not that long ago where I was kind of in a dark place. I was like processing a lot of things. I was really sad. And I watched a YouTube video of this guy, and he was talking about how the universe is you. It's not separate from you, kind of going back to what you were saying. And during that moment, I was like, all right, if the universe really is me, then I can help myself out of this. And so I said out loud, probably for like the first time ever, I was like, help me. But I was kind of like talking to myself in a way, because I'm like, all right, if the universe is me, then I'm going to figure out how to help myself. And I had to go take my dog to the vet, so I didn't have like too much more time to think about it. I was like wiping the tears off my face. I'm like, all right, whatever. And I kid you not, within 3 minutes, my boyfriend walked through the door, and he wasn't supposed to be home. He was supposed to be out like seeing a patient, and I was like, why are you here? And he's like, I don't know, I just felt like I was supposed to be here. And he was like, I felt like you needed me for some reason. And he showed me that on the way home he was listening to a song, and the singer's name was Gigi, and it was called Miss You. And I was like, okay, all right, this is real.
Very subtle God. Very
yeah,
subtle.
Right? I was like,
nice low-key flex there, Lord.
And then the rest of that day, like I kept like manifesting things in really quickly. Actually, like in the next 3 days, like a bunch of things happened. Like I kept seeing the angel numbers everywhere. I was thinking about my friend, and he texted me like shortly thereafter. But that happens a lot with him. Like we have like a weird like ESP connection. And then I manifested, like I wanted to do more collaborations, and I talked with Nalani, and she mentioned you, and I got another offer for a collaboration, like all within like 3 days of that happening. And I feel like ever since then, I've just like really taken to heart the whole, like the universe is not separate from you. It is you.
So a couple pointers to recap so far is that, something like having trust in whatever the method you're using, and really just yourself, is important to build. And then also this sense of connection or oneness. And I imagine, you do that in whatever way makes sense to you. Like if you believe, if you're very Christian, Christ is within me, the Lord is within, kingdom of heaven is within me. Or if it doesn't matter. I don't know why I'm so Christian today. Christianity has a lot of great points. You have your connection to higher power, divinity. But what I'd love to start having you explore and tell us about is what we came for, which is where you see self-love as being a part of this process.
So as I mentioned, it was like through the habits and like doing these habits and doing these hard things that I didn't think was possible that I started to believe in myself. And that belief is what really built up the self-trust within me. So I was able to like translate that into various things. So it started with the YouTube videos, but then it kind of like branched out to other things, like working on like my fitness goals or things like that. I figured out, at least for me, the method that works the best. I call it my micro action method. And it's whatever you're trying to manifest, break it down to the smallest, most achievable, most like repeatable thing you can do for 21 days straight, because you want to build up that self-trust within yourself. So, like, I'll take, let's say, weight loss for an example. I think a lot of times when we have these big, lofty goals or dreams, we set ourselves up to fail by doing too much at once. So, someone who's trying to like manifest weight loss might be like on New Year's, they're like, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week and drink a certain amount of water and do all this stuff. And the problem is, the minute you miss one of those things, which you inevitably will because you're trying to do too much at once, you break that trust with yourself. And when you break that trust with yourself, you start to kind of like self-sabotage and you get off track.
I think it's the same too with like people who get like involved in spiritual work, is they want to forgive like, mom and dad, and like who had a bad relationship with them. They want to like heal the big wounds, and it's like, slow down.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta let's learn how to stretch first before you start benching plates.
Yeah, so like in the case of the weight loss one, like I would say like, all right, walk for 10 minutes every single day. And when you can build up that habit for 21 days, then you can start adding more stuff on top of it. You have to build that like foundation first before you can like build up to it. So with manifestation or anything you want to bring in, you have to build that foundation of like self-love and self-trust, because the 3D is going to rattle you. It's going to throw some shit at you and you're going to be like, wait, this isn't what I asked for. And you got to be able to like ride the wave through that and trust in yourself and the process.
I love how you said that. I do. Yeah, I mean, again, fans of the show will know I like to whine about the physical sometimes, frequently. Yeah, just a bunch of whinging and complaining to get a little Australian about it. A question that just sort of came to me that I feel like I want to ask you is, why do you think we should love ourselves?
Oh, that's a great question. Because if you don't love yourself, like, you truly can't, like, learn to love other people if you don't love yourself. To quote RuPaul, I don't know if you're familiar. He's always like, You can't love yourself if you don't love somebody else. Or I forgot exactly what he says. But, like, I didn't realize for the longest time what that meant until I started to do it. I work with other coaches too, and they're always like, be your own best friend. And I had never done that. I had never taken the time to like appreciate my own company or like enjoy the experience of being me. Like, the whole point of us being humans and being brought to earth, or our souls incarnated here, is to experience life through this one vessel. So like, make the most of it. Like, there's never going to be another Gino. There's never going to be another Gigi. Like, you have to like make the most of whatever incarnation you've taken.
That yeah, it was funny. I was joking a couple episodes ago that I get upset with the physical experience because, you might say, hey, your soul like came here to experience things like sadness or loss or resilience. And so I do have this belief that souls are just a bunch of weirdos that get off to weird shit. So I do like to say that. Give me a second to regather, because there was something that you said that I wanted to touch on. I don't know if I remembered it. It's, self-love is so important because love is really something that is vital to the human experience. And, if anyone like doubts that, like the importance of love in like your development, like just think about what a child grows up to be if they just don't get loved enough, like as a kid, like how much that affects them when they become an adult, and like how much different it is for children who were loved, even if they were not in like the greatest of circumstances. Like, it has an effect on not only your psyche, but like your physiology, What do you think helps to build self-love? Because obviously you talked about these habits, but is there anything else you might, recommend?
I would say, like, as cheesy or cliche as it sounds, like anything that gets you into the flow state. So like, for some people that might be your ecstatic dance. For me, it's cooking. Like, I love to cook.
Right on.
Spend more time throughout the day finding time to do the things you love to do, because when you're like in that flow state, that's when you can express yourself in the highest form. That's when you're going to be in the most like loving state, because you're doing something that you genuinely enjoy, not because someone made you, not because like you have to for work or whatever. It's just out of pure enjoyment and love. Like, you're doing it because you love to do it.
That reminds me, one of my most dear spiritual teachers I've ever had is a good friend of mine named Jorge, and he was teaching me at the School of Metaphysics. And I was running two businesses at the time, and I was trying to write a book, and I was doing all these things. And he told me about how important it was to do something that you just do for joy. And he said, and the way he put it is, it's not even like do it just because you like it, but like if you're doing a lot of like spiritual work or even entrepreneurial work, like you need, it's just as important to have that, like for your success in things. Like people, I think we can often forget that joy is very important to your spirit and is probably like an aspect of like higher consciousness. Like you need to have joy. And I think joy and love are so intertwined, don't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you were talking, it made me think about like animals. And I feel like people
Yeah.
always reference animals as like the most spiritual beings because everything they do is out of joy or just for the sake of being. Like they're not trying to achieve anything, they're not trying to accomplish anything. They love you unconditionally, and that's joy right there. Like just that.
Remember to buy a cat again, Gino. You've been thinking about it. Just go get her. Yeah, and that is a good way to experience love. If you say haven't manifested the partner yet, or, could you say more about developing that love of being on your own? Because that's something I've been struggling with. And I think the way in which I struggle is that like currently there's so many attitudes and beliefs that, if I'm just honest with myself, come up in me about how my joy is tied to connecting with another person or having like professional experiences that I particularly want and feel frustrated I haven't had. So it's like I've been struggling to like turn that back in on myself. I actively try to, but I'd love to hear how you did it.
Well, it was a process. It definitely didn't happen overnight. I mean, I'm 36 years old, and I feel like I just now got to that place. So it's not like I was innately born that way. I had a lot of self-loathing and a lot of self-hate for a very long time. I think an important thing to think about is like forgiveness. Like, are there things that you're holding on to from the past? Like you're angry at yourself, like why didn't I do this differently, or why didn't I do this better, or maybe I should have taken this path, and there's kind of like some regret or unresolved anger within you of like why you didn't do that stuff, and you maybe kind of hold on to it a little bit. Because I know for me, I would always like compare myself to other people, and I'd be like, oh, why didn't I do X, Y, and Z, or why didn't I do that? And it can be very hard to like love yourself if you're constantly either regretting your past failures or comparing yourself to other people and feeling like you should be further along than you were. And honestly, I got off social media except for like YouTube. It was just like not good for my mental health. Like I had noticed like as soon as I was on there, within 10 minutes I'd feel like shit. So I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? So there might be other things too that maybe you're subconsciously doing that are a little self-sabotaging. And like I'll give you another example. When I was younger, I used to party a lot and drink and, experiment with drugs and stuff like that. And while it was fun, now that I've gotten older, if I have one too many drinks, I feel like shit the next day and I have anxiety. And I'm like, is this really worth it? Like it used to be an escape for me, but now it's just become a detriment. So.
Yeah, it's almost funny because like I think of a lot of people who watch the show are a little younger, like, and they kind of dread becoming 30. Like, no, it's great. You want it. You'd said something that is like right here. See that's the problem with using too much caffeine. Sleep is important, children. You were saying how, yeah, it was a process and we beat ourselves up. And I feel like a big reason why we beat ourselves up is that the thoughts that occur to us they have a powerful logic to them. Like it makes sense why I'm upset. It makes sense to be, again, like I just turned 31 like 2 weeks ago. And it's like, yeah, the thought does occur to you like, wow, you were supposed to be farther along. Like other people are farther along. Like, or, like you should be sad because maybe you don't have as much opportunity. And because these thoughts at some level make so much sense, they're difficult to let go because it's like there's such a logic to them. Like it's like okay, let it go, and it's like yeah, and just like not face the truth. But I really don't think thoughts are as trustworthy as they seem. And I think it's interesting that you said you were also a mindset coach. So what do you kind of think about that?
Yeah, so you were talking about like believing every thought that you have or feeling like there's truth to it.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that kind of how thought is? Like when you hear a thought, you subjectively have the feeling that the thought is true.
Yes.
Like shortly after you might say, oh, well, they didn't steal my phone. It's just in the crack of the couch. But for that moment, you fully believe they stole your phone with no evidence too.
So actually what I have done, and I know like some therapists like recommend this too, is like when you have one of those thoughts, like write it down, because more often than not, it's not a fact. It's a feeling or like I don't want to say fiction. I'm trying to think of another word for it, but it's not factual. When you're sitting there and you're being like, I'm a loser. And it's like, all right, well, what evidence do you have to support that? You know, like give me some actual facts that prove that you're a loser. And you might write it down and be like, well, I only make this amount of money and, you know, I live in this place or whatever. And it's like, but that's not a fact at the end of the day. Like, yeah, you only make that amount of money, but how does that make you a loser? Like, there's people out there who make less money than you. There's also people out there who make more money than you and they're fucking miserable. So it's like, those aren't actually facts when you spend the time to like dissect it a little bit more. And I think, at least for me, writing it down was helpful because it got it out of my head and onto paper where I could actually see it, versus when I kept it in my head, I would just like let it spiral around and like spin out of control. And that's how you get sucked into like anxiety loops or like depressions. And when I actually sat down and analyzed the thoughts that I was telling myself, like, oh, you're ugly or whatever, it's like, that's not true. There's no evidence to support that. That's all subjective.
I am like so glad you said that, because that was something, you know, at the School of Metaphysics we do, it's a school of the mind. So you do a lot of self-awareness on thoughts. And what I realized pretty quickly, and to get a little spiritual about it, you know, you could say that the ego makes a lot of claims very quickly. For a lot of people, myself definitely included, it can tend towards being very dramatic. And the problem with thought, because it's this powerful thing when you use it in your manifestation practices, but the problem with thought when it's not intentional is that it will very extremely confidently make claims that it actually has no basis to make. It'll have a little bit of a feeling or a hint of truth or like some evidence. And then it will just, if you are self-aware enough, you will watch your ego disregard facts in front of it, because no, I feel this way in my body, so that must be right. And it can be wrong all damn day, you know? It's one of my favorite spiritual teachers of all time, a guy named David Hawkins, you know, he once said, you know, one's thoughts are kind of like a curse. And he's like, well, maybe that's a little dramatic. Maybe that's a little too much. He's like, one's thoughts are kind of like bad luck. And it's true. But at the same time, thought can be very powerful. And I think a great vehicle of that is true logic, you know, like analyzing, like, is this thought actually basis, have a basis? And then also like loving self-talk.
Definitely. So when you were talking about earlier, I think you mentioned like somatic experiences.
Yeah, somatic experiencing.
There's a really interesting video Mel Robbins did with a neuroscientist, and he goes very deeply into how you can kind of get out of that thought mindset by getting back into your body. And he goes very deeply into somatic stuff. So that might be something you might be interested in too.
Oh, I've been exploring it a lot. And it's something I really recommend to the audience. Like, especially if you've done a lot of spiritual work and you find that, you know, there's maybe some negative feeling or some issue that you really just haven't been making ground on. You know, you're super aware of it. You know, you forgave the person who hurt you. You're pretty sure you are. But like you still kind of feel it, that really there's a lot to be said about going into more somatic practices, either in like a therapy setting or like a spiritual setting, whatever you want, because the body does have a lot of this. In manifestation, I've often heard it's really important to like conjure feelings, to create feelings, and that helps to like manifest. Have you had experiences with stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've had things manifest spontaneously when I'm in a good mood, but when I was in that really dark place and I asked the universe for help, I wasn't in a good place. I don't necessarily think that being in a high vibe state is necessary. It helps, but I think what really like makes the difference is you plant those seeds over time. So through the self-love, through the habits. So when those dark times come, you can again trust the process, and then the manifestation will come like in its own time. It may not happen right away, but it will come if you believe in it enough.
I think we often forget that while I do believe in stuff like instant manifestation and these like really amazing experiences, if you look at the world that you could say that God made, if you believe in something like God or like higher power, you believe, okay, if it's all powerful, like, yeah, the Lord can like snap his fingers, so to speak, and like, poof and make something happen. But again, if you look at the world that we do live in, creation happens in a seed-like nature. It starts with a small thing that has the greater image within it, and then it is nurtured, and over time it actualizes, and then it can become something truly amazing. And also part of the way through the creation, it can get cut off. And I think that's part of the importance of like the continuous action, because you have to pair that with your mental work as well.
Yeah, I always say if you spend all your time like daydreaming, sitting on your couch, like waiting for the manifestation to happen and not taking any action, that's all you're doing is daydreaming. But on the flip side, if all you're doing is taking action and you're not working on those underlying limiting beliefs, then you're just going to keep getting stuck in cycles. So it's a combination of both. Like you have to develop those like positive, good feelings, but then you also have to take action on it. And that could mean taking action even when you don't feel like it or when it feels uncomfortable, just like Cole was saying. Like, you have to make yourself uncomfortable sometimes to allow those manifestations to come in, because it's a process of growth. Like, if you want to manifest those things in, sometimes you have to get outside your comfort zone so you can get on the level of where that manifestation is.
Well, Gigi, I want to give you one more opportunity before we close today, that if there's anything in your heart that you feel like, the people who watch this show should hear, whether it's about love and self-manifestation or even something different, I'd love to give you a platform to just share what you think the world needs to know.
Yeah, I would say you're not a victim to your mind. If you've struggled with anxiety or depression for a long time, like I have, there is a way out. It is a process, but like keep going, trust yourself, find people that who can help you even, and you can find your way out of it. You're not a victim to your mind.
Well, then with that all being said, Gigi, plug your shit. Tell us where they can find you.
You can find me on YouTube and TikTok and Pinterest, Gigi by Design Co. There is a co at the end because someone else had Gigi by Design. So that's where you can find me. I do have some courses, guides, or coaching if that's something that you're interested in. All
of which will be linked in the description. So Gigi, I'm going to steal these secrets, and when I make $1 million, I'll give you one of them. Yeah, right. Just you get just one, because you already know how to fish, so you can get your own shit. And that's it for today, guys. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Do you feel like you got to say what